Okay, on the bench today we have a radio that, yeah, I dropped a stick of dynamite in it. It's blown up. So this was sent in. It's actually, the radio is actually in very good condition. It's a Cobra 29, but this is the Cobra 29 Plus. Completely different than a Cobra 29, LTD or any of the other ones. This is the Plus version. This one does not have a knob for a channel selector. It has push buttons up and down. The display goes in there. There's your up and down buttons right there. And then it has regular rotary controls for most of the things, but then it has a row of push buttons which are also all out right now. It's like noise blanker, dim, channel 9, 19, and the PA are also push buttons. So the note says classic channel display LED segments out. Contacted Cobra. They said too old to work on. I love this radio. Mike, please go through and make sure it's proper and everything. So, yes, it does have segments out. Now, Cobra, kind of, I guess rightfully so, said not repairable. Well, honestly, Cobra doesn't fix stuff. Especially older radios. If you were to send something into Cobra for warranty, they're basically just going to send you a new radio, and the old one gets sold at a, one of those pallet auctions of broken stuff. But they're kind of, even if they did, and they still service these, they would still probably tell you that it's not repairable because, as you can see, all one piece. Custom display. Well, not so much. If you're really careful, you can repair this. Unlike some other radios, which, I actually have some of those. Let me grab one for like a Uniden. So, like these displays here, these are for Unidens. These are one piece. It's literally a module. If the segments go out in this, there is no repairing it. It's just, yeah, you're screwed. Unless you have, a new one like this to replace it with. When they go out, there is nothing that can be done. These modules, I'm pointing to it and you can't see, these modules down here, drawer back, are not like that. If you're careful, you can repair it. The two sections over here, the 2/7 segment displays, they're actually a normal 7 or dual 7 segment display. So if you look at the side, you can see there's even the part number on the side. So from here over, it's a normal dual 7 segment display, just like you'd have in pretty much any other CB radio. The problem is, it has this decal that goes across this custom display over here and overlays over top of this display. If you're really, really careful, you can get your fingernail under there and you can see that. You can carefully pull up on that. And I'm not going to do this on camera because I'm afraid I'm going to rip it. I really need to have this down and be really paying attention. But you can see, you can get that up. As long as you can get that sticker pulled up and off over to that midpoint there, then you can desolder the display, kind of pull that overlay back and lift the display up and out and stick a new display in it. So it can be repaired. Just be really careful, because if you tear this overlay, you're screwed. Again, it's vintage. It's not like you're going to be able to find one of these. Well, possibly, but it's rare. Kind of like those Uniden displays. I just lucked across those things and cleaned the guy out on them. But so let me try to get that off, because that is the problem. It is the display. It does have segments out. So I'll go ahead and try to get that out, and I'll be back. Actually, once I get that out, I'll show you. Once I have the little display, the dual 7 segment display module out, I'll fire the camera back up. And taking this apart is a bit tricky. If you ever have to tear one of these apart, as normal, take the 2 screws out of each side, pull off all of the knobs, take off all of the nuts off of all of the controls. Take the nut and the washer off of the microphone jack, which is really long on this one, because you can see they have the little extender pins that come out the back, because that's the faceplate's way out here. These are going to be hard to get off. Usually and you also have to unplug this, because this, you can't get to the screws. This is screwed in to this faceplate. There's a screw there, and there's one over here. There's 4 screws that hold this board into the faceplate. You cannot get to those screws until you pull the faceplate off. There's the sockets for it. There's no holes in this board to get a screwdriver in. So you really carefully have to pry out and just kind of keep wiggling back and forth. You have to overcome the resistance of all of those pins and all of those sockets. Plus, you've got all of these buttons that are pushed onto all of these switches down here. So they're going to, and just be careful because these things will go flying all over the place. And also pay attention to what order they're in. So when you go to put this back together, you don't accidentally stick the noise blanker button on the, you know, like the PA and the dim on the channel 19. But, and I did already actually take this off. It had this snapped on over top of it, the gray diffuser lens. Just comes out the back on either side. That just easily pops out. But yeah, so like I say, let me try to get this overlay, this plastic overlay, off of this channel display. If I can get it off without ripping it. Now, even if it does get ripped, that's just a cosmetic thing. That's not going to anything electrical. You know, it's just, you don't want to rip it if you can avoid it. But yeah, if you're really, really careful, you can usually get these off. Just go really slow. It's kind of like pulling the sticker off. Everything you buy nowadays has a sticker stuck on it. If you try to really quickly pull the sticker off, you usually end up the sticker disintegrates. All the glue is stuck to your item, and you know the paper is the only thing that comes off. But if you do it really, really slow, you pull up at a slight angle and just really slowly pull up, you can get most stickers off without destroying it. This is no different. Just take your time really carefully as you're pulling, and you can usually get them up without damaging anything. And I thought really quick I'd plug the module back into this rear board here so you could actually see. So yeah, it just has segments out. And I checked the voltages on there. Yeah, voltage and everything is fine. It's got bad displays. And some of these segments actually blinked back on for a second and then went back out. Yeah, it's just an indication it's bad segments. As this display warms up, even though it's LEDs do get hot. They just don't create a lot of heat. But as this warms up, I'll probably, if I were to leave it on long enough, I'd probably see some of those other segments start to occasionally come on and off. But yeah, there's 39, 38. So yeah, you can see this has got this segment, and if we go back up to 40, so all of the, looks like most all of the upright, yeah, the 3 that go this way are fine, but all of the 4 segments that go up and down, it looks like they're all out. So yeah. So anyhow, another thing, one word of caution when you're working on these, this entire circuit board is edge soldered along the back here. This one does not have any broken solder joints, but after doing all of this work, once I put this all back together, and I have everything, you know, the faceplate's securely screwed back on, you know, all the knobs, the nuts are on, the push buttons, the screws in the side, I'm going to completely desolder all of these and resolder them. The reason for that is, if this thing is moved somewhat and it's in a slightly different position from than it was when I took it apart, that's going to be putting a lot of stress on these, and honestly that's the absolutely worst type of connection you can have. Edge soldered connections like that. They just known for failing. Cracked solder joints. That's not a strong connection. The best way to have a connection is cables, or a cable with a plug. You know, you can see up here to these controls, all of these go through 2 ribbon cables. That's what they should have done here, but nah, they did edge connectors. So yeah, just a word of caution. Once you get something like this done, once you've disturbed, you know, this board has moved a little bit, it's just a good idea to desolder it and resolder it. And this is one of those applications where highly recommend you use a silver solder, like a SN62 composition, because that is the strongest electronic solder that there is. It has the highest tensile strength, and this is where you want a really good tensile strength solder. So, and also when you do it, make sure you put a good bit of solder in there. These actually look like they're very well soldered. You can see it has a really nice fillet. It doesn't just go down and there's a little tiny spot that comes out. You can see it really has kind of like the walls of a volcano. You know, it goes up at an angle like that. So when you redo these, you want to make sure you do the same thing. Have enough solder in there, because if you don't put a lot in there, it's going to be a weak joint. Now, by the same token, don't get hog wild and just be running in there with the solder, because you're just going to cause a bunch of solder bridges that you're going to have to clean up. There's a happy medium. There's too little, too much, and then there's just right. Okay, so after some careful surgery, old display is out. As I said, it's just a normal dual 7-segment display, and I don't want to call it new old stock. I stock everything. So yeah, here's a bunch of old vintage displays. Have 3 of them in stock, down to 2 now. But as you can see, we have all of our segments now. Really kind of blinds. Actually, let's see, I think, nope, that's not dim. There we go, that's dim. It doesn't make it much more visible in the camera. If I get it at an angle there, you can see it. Just scan through and you can see all the segments are now illuminated. So, successful repair. Now, one tip, it had actually 2 tips. First is, if you have a radio like this, it's old, the odds are very good if you're missing segments, it's a bad display. Now, especially on a radio like this. This does not have a channel selector switch. Now, if you have a radio that has a mechanical channel selector switch, it's a 50-50 chance it's either the display or it's it just has dirty contacts on the channel selector switch. If you rock your channel selector switch back and forth and kind of even grab the knob, you know, and kind of put a little bit of sideways force on it, rocking it back and forth like that, and the segments come on and off, you most likely just have a dirty channel selector, so you need to get a little bit of cleaner into it and clean the contacts. But it is very common for the actual segments in the old displays to go bad. Now, if you want to be 100% sure, because especially in the case of like this radio, where you always stand a chance of damaging, because you can see I actually completely removed the overlay, so the overlay is missing, and you don't want to take a chance of damaging that by removing it just to find out that, well, it wasn't the display that was bad in the first place. It was the driver IC maybe. Easiest thing to do there is with the module unplugged, what you want is, in this case, this is a page I scanned out of the service manual. It actually has listed the lead identification for all the components in this radio, and on this page they happen to have the dual 7-segment display. They show you that it is a common anode, because you can see all of the anodes for each of the segments for each side. All the anodes are tied together, and then the cathodes are the ones that actually get switched in and out by the IC in the radio. And then they even tell you the functions down here. So what you can do on something like this, let's see. Well, and I actually did it myself. I checked it before, just to be positive sure, before I pulled this overlay off, and you can see I got it off without ripping it or kinking it. And that's where I'll get to my next little trick here in a minute. If you have a multimeter that has a diode test function, you can use that diode test function to check a display. Now, the displays are not going to light up at full brightness, because it's supplying a very limited current and voltage, but it is enough to light up a segment. So you can test this. So actually, let me switch over to a grabby clamp here. Be a little bit better than that big alligator clamp. And let's see, we had pin 13 and 14 are the common anodes. So if we go to one of these 2 center pins on the top section, that's the top. Put our multimeter over here in the diode test function. And we don't really care if it beeps or what it says. What we're actually doing is like I say, the meter is supplying enough voltage and current to slightly illuminate the display. So if we go, I don't even know if that shows up in the camera. Let me get it down here to the bench a little bit more. May even have to turn off the overhead light. There, that top segment, you can just see it. If I take my finger off, you can't see it, but if I shadow it with my finger, you can see that is illuminated. Okay? The problem is when I touch these other leads, same one. Now I'm touching that lead right there. That should be illuminating. If I look over there at the chart, that should be illuminating another segment in this display, and it's not. There's nothing lighting up in there. And likewise, if I come over to this side, okay, you can see that's lighting up that bottom one. Again, trying to shadow the display so you can see it. That's lighting up the middle bar. And there's another dead one, and this inner one here, that's another dead one. So, and you can also hear when I touch some of these, the meter is not beeping. If I touch one that works, you can hear every time. Oh, I guess you can hear that. Move the camera over here a little closer to the meter. If I get to a working segment, it tests as a diode, and I can actually read the forward voltage. It's 1.82 volts. But if I get to one of these ones that's, oh, I touched the other lead there. If I get to one of the ones that doesn't work, it doesn't light up. It also has no forward voltage because it's no good. So, but you can do that on the back. On the back of the board, what I would recommend is just solder a wire to like pins 13 and 14. Before you remove this entire, take the little decal sticker off there and desolder the module. What you can do is just solder a wire to pins 13 or 14, or in the case of this one, because you have these header pins that go back into the main board, just trace down and see which one of these pins on this header socket here attached to pins 13 and 14 on the display. Attach one of your ohm meter leads to that. In this case, because this is common anode, you're going to be attaching the positive lead to the anode, and then just sweep across all of the other pins, and you should see each of the segments light up. So, if you attach to pin 13 here, attach your positive, pin 10, 11, 12, 9, 8, 7, and 6 should light up different displays to include, and you also have the decimal points down here, which aren't used in this radio. So the other trick is, and it's been so long since I took one of these off, after I started to peel this decal or this little overlay sticker off, because it is the sticker residue, or not residue, but the sticker goo, the actual adhesive, is really stringy. And it was really holding on, but I could get it pulled out to where I could get like the little strands of the glue just don't want to let go. They really stretched out like that far. So what I did was I actually snuck the razor blade as I was pulling this off down in between and just kind of followed right along the glue, pulled up on it to expose the glue and just kind of went right along and just kind of sheared off the little strands of glue as it came, and it came right out. So just be really careful, and you can get these apart, even though they weren't designed to be repaired. Like I say, it can be done. Now, can you find one of these displays? I don't know. I've got, like I said, I just stock everything. So it's just by luck chance I had extras of the exact same display. You can see 2253Y, 2253Y. Now this one is a G version. I think this one might be a tad bit brighter in intensity. If I remember right, I think that's what the extra letter is, where this one's just a plain Y version. I think the G version might be slightly brighter, but this does have the dim button, so that doesn't really matter. You can always just hit the dim button to dim it down. So let me get that little overlay put back on, get the lens on, get the whole faceplate of the radio together. Now the one thing I do want to do is contact the customer, because he didn't say anything about restoring the radio. The only thing he commented, well, kind of roughly, he did say, Mike, please go through it and make sure it's proper and everything. But he didn't specifically say he wanted this recapped. I'm going to recommend it get recapped because this is an old radio, April 1987. So yeah, this thing is several decades old. The other thing is, someone has already replaced a couple of the capacitors. I don't know if it was in an attempt to get this display to work. It looks like they replaced most of the caps in the front. This one's new, that one, those two, and that one. And I think that's it. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, oh, that one too, 5, 6. So yeah, there's like 6 new caps in here, and the rest of them are original. If you had electrolytic capacitors going bad, that's kind of a slap in the face to tell you, hello, it's time to replace all of them. They're going bad. Because like I say, this is an 80s radio. So yeah, I'm going to recommend, there's not that many of them in here. It's an AM only radio. Just recap the rest of it, get an alignment done, and now it's got a new display in it. It should be good for, you know, several more decades before it has any more problems. Okay, so I shot the customer an email, let him know I got the display working in this again, and he said go ahead and do a cap change in it and an alignment, because honestly, they don't get much easier than this in AM only radio. God, if they were only all this easy. Yeah, corrosive glue, there was a little bit of glue on this one cap here. That was about it. So yeah, really no corrosive glue to clean out what, you know, compared to a lot of other radios. Again, it's an AM only radio, nowhere close to as many parts as you have in multi-mode radios. I also, as I said, should be done, desoldered all of the edge board connector solder joints here and then resoldered them. And like I say, I use silver solder just because it has higher tensile strength. And sure enough, once I had this all screwed back together, when I desoldered the last solder joint here on the end, the board went pop, it moved. So that told me right there it was under a lot of stress. So that's why I suggest anytime you take these apart and you've been moving that board around, desolder them and resolder them, because there's going to be a lot of stress there. And the last thing you want to do is, especially if you're working on a radio for a customer, is send it back to them and then 6 months later they're complaining about, you know, the display's out again. Well, it might not be the display this time. It might be because there's solder joints have popped loose here on those edge connectors. So let me get the covers back on this and get the faceplate cleaned up. Not that it really needs much cleaning, but get basically fingerprints cleaned off of it, and you see how nice a condition this is, because when I started the video it had already had a stick of dynamite thrown in it and there were just parts laying all over the place.
Yeah, I took it, I had this radio, all these radios and stuff on it. I took it out from underneath of it. Now I'm sitting on top of the bar there. So now I got the switching power supply and 2970. I'm on the 99 and I got the 88 above it.
And yes, this is one of those radios that has a beep when you push the up-down buttons. So there she is, all back together now. The chrome face on this, man, it's hard to get it at an angle. Get the camera where there's not horrible reflection. But yeah, you can see all of the silk screen print on it is still in perfect condition. None of it's rubbed off. Cover's in really nice condition. Also, yeah, a little bit of minor imperfections in the top faceplate here, but other than that, yeah, it's about as nice condition as you can get. Now, some people may be wondering, why would you restore something like this? Well, the customer likes it, and in the email he sent, you know, actually go over here and click on it. Let's see here. Anytime, I really like this radio, you know, and he does, and that's, you know, especially if he's like the original owner and has been using this thing for several decades, he's probably got really used to using it. You know, a lot of people ask why you restore old AM radios, not specifically me, but why customers send in AM radios to have them restored. Well, if you don't talk sideband, you don't need a sideband radio. And actually, if you don't talk sideband and you buy a sideband radio, you're just wasting money. If you only ever talk on AM, this is something like this is all you need. And it's just like a regular Cobra 29. That's why the Cobra 29 model number has been around for so many decades, you know, since the mid-1970s. I mean, the first Cobra 29 was a 23-channel radio. That's how long the Cobra 29 model number has been around. And they still make it to this day. But it's an AM-only radio, and the reason it's popular, even still to this day, the majority of people that use CBs, they're talking on AM, folks. Yes, the die-hard CB radio nuts talk sideband, but the majority of people that are just using a radio either to talk in the evenings to, local friends, truck drivers, and stuff like that, they're just using an AM radio. And this is a perfectly good one. Full featured, full complement of controls, RF gain, mic gain, squelch, multimeter functions, SWR, your calibrate modulation meter, signal RF meter, noise blanker, ANL, PA. It's got the dim, the bright dim. Yeah, you can see that in the camera there. It's got the, like if we get off of channel 19, you hit that button, it takes you automatically to channel 19, and then has the automatic channel 9 buttons. So, a nice full-featured radio. So, in any case, there we go, a Cobra 29 Plus. Was sent in for lots of segments out in the display. Like I say, these weren't really designed to ever be fixed. You can just tell by the design, especially since they have that little the sticker or decal over the LEDs over here in the display. It wasn't meant to be replaced, but it can be. It's just a matter of being careful when you peel that decal off. So there you go, one ready to be put back into service.